Begin with Joe Biden today. We're going to get to the Republicans, but Joe Biden, well, he's done it again. This is Biden on the campaign trail.
When I was vice president, I flew over 1 million miles on Air Force Two, and I was going home as a United States as vice president. And one of the conductors said to me, "Hey Joe, big deal, million whatever 200." You said you've traveled over 1 million miles on Amtrak. I said, "How the hell do you know that?" And they added it up at there. But folks, look,
it's not true. He's told this story before, and yet again, it's not true. He said they gave him a key to a car on Amtrak. It's not true. He has told the story before. It has been walked back before. It has been debunked before, and yet he's out there now telling us this sort of story. How can you believe anything he says when you say the economy is recovering or not? This is one of Joe Biden's fundamental problems. The other problem Joe Biden has, another fundamental problem Joe Biden has, is that you've got Kamala Harris campaigning by his side. The Washington Post has been interviewing Democrats in swing states, including here where I am in Georgia. They've been interviewing them in South Carolina, in Ohio, in New Hampshire, in Florida, the swing states that will matter. And there is not a lot of confidence in Kamala Harris. In fact, a Democratic Party operative in South Carolina said he's worked his whole life to pave the groundwork for a female, non-white president of the United States, and he doesn't think Kamala Harris has what it takes. Elizabeth Warren was on television this weekend, and she had to, well, clarify herself the next day. She was asked on CNN or wherever she was, I think it was CNN, about the ticket, and she said she looks forward to supporting Joe Biden in 2024. And they asked her, what about Kamala Harris? And she gave this muddied response that Joe Biden would have to chart his way forward and decide his ticket, which suggested it was not a vote of confidence in Kamala Harris. That was not a vote of confidence in Kamala Harris. The next day, she had to walk it back. The next day, Elizabeth Warren had to release a statement and say, well, we support Joe Biden and Kamala Harris 2024. You could have said that day on television, but you did not. Why? Because she doesn't. There's all of this rumbling about Gavin Newsom right now. What if Gavin Newsom is not running to be president, but running to be vice president? You know, if Joe Biden were to actually run for the second term and or to make it through the second term, he'd be 86 years old. You're banking on an 80-something and a high-stress job. Maybe Newsom wants to be vice president, and unlike Kamala, he'll be the one to put the roller skates on the steps of the White House. He's deeply ambitious, clearly more ambitious than Kamala, who, after her ambitions with Willie Brown, decided to move on. Here's the problem. Joe Biden wants to run for president of the United States for a second term. It's his right to run for a second term should he wish to run a second term. The problem is that Joe Biden running for a second term puts him over 80 years old, oldest man to serve the presidency. There have already been these mutterings about the problems with Joe Biden and his memory and his stamina. In fact, I was told before the election that assuming the election went bad for the Democrats, which everyone thought, you would see the New York Times and others start doing these stories about Joe Biden. It appears those stories are still now coming. I thought they had decided to pull them because Joe Biden had a pretty good midterm election, but nope, it appears the stories are still coming. The stories will be there. The stories are going to be about how maybe Joe Biden really does need to be one term. Maybe we really did have this good thing, but maybe, just maybe, he might be too old. And now they're beginning to sabotage Kamala Harris in the process. But Joe Biden is planning his reelection. He is planning to surround himself with a team. And in that team, they've come up with a strategy. This is MJ Lee from CNN.
So you have some brand new reporting, as I understand, on the current president is going to focus on GOP extremism as he nears an announcement to run in 2024. What are the implications here?
Well, John, basically, if you take a look at President Biden's travels, his speeches, his events over the last few weeks, you get a pretty clear roadmap of not only his State of the Union speech coming up next week, but also for his 2024 reelect pitch. You look at how his schedule has been crafted, and White House officials will say there's several things that they really want him to do. Tout the economic progress from the last 2 years, for example. That's something that has been really important to him. Really focusing on the implementation of the legislation passed over the last 2 years. And a big part of this is also just the political messaging and trying to paint House Republicans as extremists and lawmakers who are going to undo some of that economic progress. So expect to see more of that coming from the president, particularly as we head into next week and that big speech Tuesday night.
That big speech Tuesday night that comes up where he will certainly drop strong hints of his future. Here's what's happening. They looked at 2022 where they thought it was going to be a disaster. And 2022 turned out not to be the disaster everyone, including the Democrats, thought it was going to be. In large part, the voter analysis showed it was Republican voters, 13% of them could not stomach voting for the election deniers and the hardcore Trump voters, or the hardcore Trump candidates. You had independent voters, moderate voters, broke for the Democrats. The first time they've broken for the incumbent party in a midterm since George W. Bush in 2002. So the Democrats have decided, we can do this again. We can do the same playbook. The Democrats have decided they can paint the GOP as extremists, and they will undoubtedly help themselves with George Santos, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Matt Gaetz and the like in the House of Representatives, and use them as indicative of the Republican Party as a whole, and they will package Joe Biden's entire reelection on, you stopped them once, you got to stop them again. There is a fundamental flaw in this program, however. There is a fundamental flaw in this plan. Joe Biden will not be running against Republicans in 2024. Joe Biden will be running against a single Republican in 2024. He won't have the House of Representatives to run against. He will have a candidate. And so what he will try to do is paint that candidate as tied to the House Republicans, beholden to the House Republicans, doing the House Republicans' bidding. How does it work if it's not Trump, though? This is their problem in mapping out this course and in deciding that they're going to run against extremist Republicans. If you have a candidate who is not Trump, who has faced Donald Trump in the primary, who beats Donald Trump in the primary, it suddenly, based on the media's pre-existing narrative, appears to be a repudiation of the things of Trump. So Joe Biden, then trying to run on the extremism of the Republican Party, faces a nominee who beat Donald Trump in a primary, who is therefore not as extreme as Donald Trump, although you and I know they will suddenly say, oh my gosh, the GOP is so extreme, they got this DeSantis guy or Nikki Haley or Mike Pence, who's more extreme than Donald Trump. We did not think it could become more extreme than Donald Trump, but apparently, Nikki Haley is more extreme than Donald Trump. The woman who did not serve out all 4 years of Donald Trump's term, left early. She left because Donald Trump wasn't extreme enough for her. This is the sort of attack the American people aren't going to believe this. The Democrats and the media have built Donald Trump and his Republican Party up as the greatest existential threat in modern American history. If the Republicans choose not to go with Donald Trump in 2024, the Republicans themselves will have upended the Democrats' narrative. If the Republicans upend the Democrats' narrative, the Democrats and the media will be left to scramble to claim in some capacity that this new person is far worse than Donald Trump. And who really outside the rabbit fringes of the Democratic Party are going to believe that? Particularly when undoubtedly you will have Donald Trump out there suggesting he might run as a third-party candidate to disrupt everything, to ruin everything, to destroy whoever it is who beat him. It's really hard to run against extremist Republicans when the guy you're running against possibly is not Donald Trump and therefore would have beat him in a primary. But that's their playbook because it's the one they know, because it's the one they're familiar with. When you have a doddering old fool who's over 80 years old, you give him what he's familiar with, and he's familiar with running the playbook that these other people are too extreme. The larger issue here, though, are these elected baby boomers who just can't let go. If you're a baby boomer listening to me and you are not an elected official, I'm not talking about you. God bless you for your tenure wherever you were, helping your company, helping your family, helping your business, helping your country grow. For some reason, though, there is this strain of baby boomer who gets himself elected to high office and cannot let go of the levers of power. Unlike the baby boomers you encounter when they greet you at Walmart or who are taking care of their grandkids or having a few drinks on the golf course, smoking cigars, telling great stories, or going back to their businesses as consultants to help them grow, these baby boomers, they stand there and say, "Look at me, I have power." And they won't let it go. They won't step aside for Gen X. They won't step aside for millennials. They won't step aside for anyone. They are convinced that they and they alone are the indispensable party and that none of us can move beyond them, whether it's Trump or whether it's Biden. These guys have decided that they alone are the ones who can fix the country when they and their generation, if we're honest about it, are the ones who gave us runaway debt, runaway inflation, runaway hippies, runaway you name the problem. The baby boomers are the ones who presided over the country and gave us all of these problems we now deal with, and still you've got Joe Biden and Donald Trump both saying, we can't let go of power. We must be the ones to fix the problem we created. We can't give it to a new generation with new ideas. And that ultimately is Joe Biden's problem. That ultimately is Donald Trump's problem. But the incumbent president of the United States, if he runs again, running against supposed extremist Republicans and suddenly faces a Republican who is not named Donald Trump, who beat Donald Trump in the primary, suddenly it becomes a very compelling argument of, do we go forward or do we stay in the past? Do we get past the boomers and move our country into the future? And if it's a past versus future argument, if it's a present versus future argument, Biden can scream extremism all he wants, but he'll be the guy who mixes up his stories on stage and gets confused as to the exit off the stage versus a more youthful, charismatic personality. The Democrats just may, as they're planning his 2024 path forward, ponder those things.